Thank you very much, Tina. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's AAMA Member Connect webinar, part of the COVID-19 Road to Recovery series. My name is Pete Gustafson. I'm the Executive Vice President for AAMA, and I'll be the MC for this conversation. This is our third webinar of the new year, and we'll be holding one per month leading up to the Amusement Expo International scheduled for June 29th through July the 1st. And I certainly hope you're registered and ready to go for that. These webinars will focus on what you need to know to bring your business back online after months of government mandated shutdowns due to this persistent pandemic. Today's conversation will focus on real estate and will be led by RJ Mohindra, a principal at FEC Real Estate. Mohindra, I'm sorry, RJ Mohindra. RJ will be joined by two FEC owners, Justin Ripp with Schenaniganz in Texas, and DK Patel from Safari Nation in North Carolina. After their presentations, our guests will answer as many of your questions as we have time for. You can pose your questions by typing them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. You may begin to do so now and throughout today's program. If we're unable to get to your question, we'll do our best to provide answers in the recap email we'll be sending out following this webinar. Please note this webinar will be archived on AAMA's website for future viewing. RJ, welcome. We're here to talk FEC Real Estate today. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background, tell us how you became to be involved in this niche category of real estate and a snapshot of strategies you'll be sharing over the course of this webinar.
Well, Pete, thanks a lot for having me. Excited to be here. You guys run a really good show and excited your conference is coming up in a couple months. I think it was last year at this exact time that you had the last conference. You guys did a great job. In any case, my name is RJ Mohindra. My company, like Pete said, is FEC Real Estate. We started about 3 years ago, actually. About a month ago, 3 years ago was our third anniversary. So my background is I studied real estate in grad school. Excuse me, came out, did a lot of corporate work, worked at some multinational firms, and then started FEC Real Estate again 3 years ago, saw a space in the market, wanted to work with individuals that could use help. I feel like there was a hole as far as the help that FECs could use in order to really get a strong lease. And I think what we forget is how much of an expense it is. And I really wanted to kind of step in. I found that my experience having been a tenant in the past on a corporate organization and having worked with brokers, having worked with a landlord or being a landlord allows me to kind of put on multiple hats. But in any case, excited to be here. Thank you again.
Okay. I'm going to turn this program over to you, RJ. But before I do, I'd like to remind the audience to send in your questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. So RJ, if you're ready.
Yeah, actually, so let's go ahead and get started like you had suggested about the three. So we're going to talk about 7 strategies throughout this webinar. What we're going to do is the way it's going to structure is I'm going to give a couple, then I have Justin again and DK coming on, and then we're going to talk about strategies with them as well. So we'll get to 7, so don't worry. And then you have my presentation, so we can even go more than that, and you can follow up later. In any case, so when you're dealing with your landlord, the first thing, macro level, is you have to have a good relationship. You have to have good interaction. There's a soft side. Let's get to the economics, not the soft side. The first thing that you have with the landlord when you're cash tight is a security deposit. One thing that you can allow them to have is your security deposit, and you can say, hey, in the future, I will replenish it. That can help as far as the rent expense that you may not have the money for. The second thing that we can try to use is your CAM expense. You have to remember, the landlord may have a note that they have to pay, right? Likely they do have a note. So they need that rent. On the CAM side, what happens is you have your common area maintenance. We know that vendors are very hungry for things right now. You can ask your landlord, hey, can we reduce our administrative fee? Hey, can we actually get our common area maintenance vendors to be able to reevaluate the cost of the maintenance of the parking lot? Can we make sure that we have property taxes being actually looked at and being contested? Insurance is a lot cheaper. So that's one particular strategy. Or that's the second strategy. The third strategy is just general stuff. You try to right size. Say, hey, landlord, you realize there's some inefficiencies in your space. I want to go ahead and I need to cut this amount of space. And I know that it's in the front part of your building. And so that way you can lease it to somebody else. So we know that we're cutting our rent expense. And then at the end of the day, we're allowing our landlord to be able to lease it to somebody else. Additional revenue. We have a lot of clients that are looking for patios, that are using patios. They get it approved from the city. The landlord understands it's outside, which is huge right now. We know mini golf, which you can't really do in a patio, is huge right now. So we can do cornhole, things that are really economical. So you're not spending a lot of money on attractions. And those are sources of additional revenue. So those are 3 strategies. We have a little bit of time before Justin is going to join us. We have about 3-4 minutes. If anyone wants to chime in and ask questions about those, I'm happy to answer them.
Don't be bashful.
Well, we have a little bit more time. Why don't I go ahead and give another strategy that I wasn't going to talk about otherwise? One thing that you always want to try to do is you want to try to, hopefully you've already looked at this, but if you can look at your termination right. Now, at the end of the day, you obviously don't want to terminate. I understand, but we have a lot of people that are under a lot of duress. And if you have to examine that, if you want to examine that, and then you want to make sure that you can execute it. And that's something that you need to consider. We don't want to do that. It's towards the end of my slide deck, but it's something I just wanted to bring up because it's the beginning and I know people are out there with a lot of distress, and you can negotiate a termination as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be, even if it's not in your lease, you can still present it to your landlord.
And are you finding landlords open to these conversations?
On the termination, to be honest, it's
Not
a hard
termination, but really just the whole structure of the lease, looking at the effect the pandemic's had on their tenants. Are they amenable to, they'd rather have the space occupied than not, I assume.
Oh, 100%. I think it's huge. And I know Justin's going to talk about this, is you have to continuously have interactions. They want to be creative because at the end of the day, Pete, it's hard to re-tenant.
Yeah.
Right. So apparel companies are really out. Amazon's taking people, online grocers are taking people. You can't re-tenant. They want to make sure to have us. So,
yeah.
So I think those conversations are huge, and they have to be consistent and they have to continue. And landlords, you're going to have amicable relationships if you make that effort. And again, just to piggyback off of that, you want to do face-to-face meetings. It's much harder to say no in person than it is over the phone or a Zoom. Now, of course, you have to keep distance in some of these things, but you want to get as close to that person as possible because then you leverage that personal relationship. Because there's a soft side of this, right? It's obviously a pandemic that's a personal thing that's going on as well. So,
and it's not as though it's unknown that tenants are feeling distressed now. So I'm assuming starting these conversations sooner rather than later is the better strategy, as opposed to just coming to them and saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I got to close the doors."
Yeah, exactly. I think it goes back to ongoing communication. It goes back to everyone's in the same boat here. It goes back to they need us, and we have to present ourselves in a place of leverage. We have to present ourselves as far as how from 2020 to 2027, it's going to be 10% compounded annual growth for our industry. We have coronavirus fatigue. We are really poised for the future. And, we have the stimulus money coming. We have unemployment increasing. There's a lot of sells. We can't sit back and be scared because there's no reason to.
Yeah.
So, Justin, are you ready to join us, sir?
I'm ready, buddy.
All right. Well, I'm super excited, guys. Justin Ripp from Shenanigans. He also owns 3 Urban Airs. You probably remember him. He's won IAPA Operator of the Year from about, X amount of years ago. So excited to have him. Don't want to act too excited because you can tell Justin's obviously done well, and then he gets a little, I don't want him to give him too big of a head. In any case, Justin, we want to talk about
bald head.
We want to talk about 2 points. One point that I think macro level, a lot of people have already evaluated is rent, right? There's various scenarios how you can abate your rent, how you can, work out scenarios where you're not abated, but in the future, you're going to have to pay a little bit less and all these kinds of things. But one thing that you did, I thought was really creative, is related to your personal guarantees. Can you talk a little bit about how you worked on your personal guarantees, and you can talk a little bit about your personal guarantees, about how you did a burn off and how you added a personal guarantee and these kinds of things?
Yeah, no problem. Be happy to. Yeah. So the way we approached this was cash is king. So we pretty much told all of our landlords, we're not going to pay cash right now out to you. And they always say, okay, well, let's see. We were always very honest. We always shared our numbers with our landlords and pretty much said, until we can come to a compromise, we're not sending you guys any checks. And all of our landlords were very reasonable. We don't have any mom and pop landlords. All of our landlords are big multinational operators. So they had the cash positions that they didn't necessarily had to squeeze me right away. So they were able to work with me on when I said I wasn't paying cash. And we all approached my money and the personal guarantees very differently. Some landlords would look at the year's rent. So I had signed non-disclosure, so all this is hypothetical. We owed about $500,000 in rent to one landlord, which would have been he did not make us pay April through March of this year. And that landlord said, okay, look, you don't have to pay me any of the money. Please pay all the triple nets for the year, and let's add $250,000 to your personal guarantee. And so we assigned on for the $250,000 added to our personal guarantee, because if things ever go south, it's much easier to negotiate personal guarantees than it is to ask back for the cash that you already paid them. We had other landlords who were nice enough to go to half rent for a while, and they wanted us to add the difference to our personal guarantee. So it burned off, but it burned off with continued rent. So we had to personally guarantee another $150,000, but our $15,000 a month in rent burned that down. So it was, essentially just borrowing the cash at zero interest to say we're going to operate the business for another year, which was still in our main lease term. So it wasn't something that we weren't planning on doing anyways. Other landlords that we had they were a little bit more cash strapped. They were CNBC debt, which means they have to pay the money no matter what. They weren't able to work out deals with their banks. With them, we offered, they needed to know when the cash flow was coming. So we offered to pay them half rent much earlier than we offered all of our other people. And in exchange, we wanted to be released from all guarantees at the end of 2021. When we went back to full rent, we paid all of our rent, because they were in a position where they needed the cash flow to come back in. So we were able to actually limit or lower our personal guarantees to them by providing cash in the fall and having it burn off the entire guarantee, which would have gone to about the middle of 2023 or 2022. Actually, is going to burn off at 2021. So we're able to use the guarantee that we had in different landlords to offer different deals that kind of with what they needed, because they were honest with us. We need cash today. And what we needed financial flexibility. So by them saying, we'll take away your guarantee at the end of 21 enabled me to say, okay, well, I have no problem going to start paying out cash now, because in big picture, this is saving me cash in the long term.
All right, Justin, you said a lot of good points in there. So I want to kind of pick at them a little bit so that we're not missing anything. You use a lot of different terms too. So one thing I think we want to start with, and Pete said this, is honest. And I think that was huge, because you actually understand the debt position of the landlord. For example, I have a client where the tenant has to pay $67,000 a month, but we've already figured out from the landlord that their note is much less than that. So we know he's not in jeopardy of defaulting him. You understood that, okay, hey, CMBS, they have to pay. How are we going to work out with them? Because we know they have to pay. How can we be very specific about their personal guarantee, about how you're going to structure your personal guarantee? How did you get to that point And can you talk a little bit, you got really specific in there. So there was a decent amount of negotiations. Was there a lot of transparency?
Oh yeah, so everybody's very transparent. I mean, they all wanted to see um, our me and my business partner's personal balance sheets. So they wanted you to be transparent. So we were able to send over some of our other businesses that were worth a decent amount of dollars. So they were able to see that we had the money, that if we put these on our personal guarantees, that there was recourse for them. So it wasn't necessarily them letting us borrow money from the future with no risk to them, or a lot of high risk to them, because they understood that by us signing the personal guarantees, there were levers they could pull in order to come back and get the money. But for the most part, with each one of these landlords, we just met with them in person for the ones that we didn't know well, and for the ones that we had good relationships with, just over Zoom, and explained, hey, we're in the entertainment business. We have no money coming in. We are also 40,000 square feet. So you have no options if we go out of business. I don't personally want to go bankrupt. And you don't personally want to go with an empty box. So what can we do in order to help each other out? And most of them understood that we're different than Steinmart, or that's the bad example, Steinmart. We are different than Half Price Books, that we weren't having any revenue come in. So most of them, as long as we were being honest, as long as we showed them that we had the ability to pay in the future, and we were firm with what, guys, this is what we need to survive, they were willing to work with us for the most part. There was a couple that played hardball, don't get me wrong, that we all got up from the table with, well, you'll be hearing from our lawyers, and then time goes by, you can pick back up the phone again, and nobody wants to pay lawyers. So you're able to kind of work through things more amicably. So it wasn't always fun poker, but for the most part, it was just a negotiation across the table with people who understood where the other party was.
Hey, Justin, 2 points that I want to piggyback off as well. Those are very sophisticated strategies, to be honest. And you did it as far as when you get into the personal guarantee and how you do a burn off. And those are they're very technical. I think we talked about this. You did have an attorney that didn't come to the table with them, but was working with you behind the scenes. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, so we have a fair number of attorneys that we've had to pay in the past from when we opened up the escape rooms and trampoline parks. So we already kind of had some attorneys that we had relationships with, and they suggested, when we're talking with them, hey, play around with the personal guarantees. They were able to look up where these landlords were from, if they were in a bad debt position and stuff like that. So they were kind of able to help us along with, hey, this landlord, for the most part, landlords were all very reasonable. The one that wasn't, they were able to kind of explain what they were looking for, and give us the strategies that mess with the personal guarantee, ask for the quicker burn off, tell them you're willing to give up whatever you need to do if you count the dollars. We offered to pay them a lump sum for the next year's rent, but we offered 6 months cash up front. Were they willing to take that? So we tried different strategies to weather the storm, to see what was allowed, and kind of, there was definitely lots of going back and forth on one landlord in particular, and the other landlords, for the most part, were willing to work with us, and kind of, as long as we were willing to sign on some personal guarantee, they understood that we were just trying to keep strong cash positions for the near futures, and kind of borrow from the future.
And I'm going to go back to kind of a rudimentary point, and then I know we'll kind of keep going here. And again, appreciate your time. You not only discussed these strategies, and you got to these points, and you made a lot of accomplishment. Had a lot of accomplishments, but you also were transparent about the future. As much as if I based on our conversations, you weren't only talking about, okay, we're in distress. You also said, hey, there's a lot of optimism as well. Is that something you showed, financial projections and stuff like that, I believe?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the landlords knew most of these discussions were summer and fall that we didn't know what was going on. So that everybody had optimism about when stuff was going to happen, and what could, that the future for entertainment could be bright. But for the most part, it was just kind of, understand that they didn't want the box back. And I was willing to show them my books and explain, I think we're going to be strong in the future. So they were willing to work with us. We sent over projections, but we all know that our projections that we thought was going to happen after COVID, I have multiple businesses that some businesses are doing what they were doing in 2019 and some businesses that are doing terrible. So we all don't, there was no way to look into the future. It was just much more honest. Let's get through this together. You don't want to give somebody else TI. You don't want to give somebody else this box. What can we do to get through this so that if there is a default that happens, it's multiple years down the road when we both can say we gave it our honest try.
Wonderful. Well, I think before Justin leaves here, does anyone have any questions that they would like to pose towards Justin?
If I may just go back up a little bit, Justin, tell us about your business, if you wouldn't mind. What all is, you're in the family entertainment space in multiple ways, correct? And it's all in Texas.
Yeah, so I'm all in the Dallas and Dallas suburbs. I own a couple bowling alleys, or large FECs. I own 4 escape rooms that are an Escapology franchise, and I own 3 trampoline parks that are Urban Air franchise.
Yeah.
And are bouncing back quicker than others. I definitely think that whatever the target age or the normal age for my demographic, if they are a little bit younger, that's coming back a little bit slower. If they're more of an adult audience, they're coming back quicker because people are definitely much more willing to gamble with their own health than their kids.
Yep.
But for the most part, all of them have seen steady growth over the last couple months and they all operated in the black in January and February.
That's fantastic. And you're optimistic midterm?
Yeah, I'm optimistic midterm and short term, and long term. I think that there's with the amount of government money that has come in and the programs that are in place, we're in strong cash positions. So I think that we'll be able to get through where we need to get through, where the vast majority of the population has the vaccine, so that we're not having to work with a part of our population that's scared to come out.
Yeah.
I do have a question for Justin as well, if you don't mind. Hey, Justin, we do have an urban air in our area as well, and I always wonder how that membership work actually, because I saw you have so much lower cost of membership per month. So is that really, because I've seen some of the operators, they fail as well in the membership program. Is it really profitable, or is it worth it to have that membership program, and how that work for you?
Yeah, so there's so much I'm allowed to say and not allowed to say about memberships because of franchise. I can say that for that business model, I love the membership. I think it's cool. Lunchbox money, or mailbox money at the beginning of every month, and it's pretty much a set flat. There's not a much variable labor. This is pretty standard. I don't have to add a bunch more people. Once you have your basic employees for a Tuesday afternoon, that's what you're staffed for. So the membership money, members come in, or 100 members come in, that's probably 10 members come in or 30 members come in. I'm still running with members come in. So I like the model for that type business. I don't have memberships for my escape rooms and on my bowling alley for the summer, but it's at a much higher price point.
Hey guys, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to interrupt you, and we're gonna have to. I know Justin's got to go, and I know a lot of people. We want to
thank you, Justin.
Keep on course as far as the real estate matters, but I know that UA has got some cool strategies. I mean, Justin's got a lot of strategies, as you guys know. He's been in the industry and done very well. And DK, of course, you've done very well as well. But we'll carry on. Thank you so much, Justin, for your time. Appreciate it. And guys, you can always reach out to me and I'll be able to, kind of finesse the conversation with Justin as well.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
You guys.
So we're going to continue here. We're going to shift gears. We've been talking about obviously the strategies you need to use with your landlord. But what I want to talk about here for the next 7-8 minutes until we start talking to DK and go back to the distress situation with your landlord is how's the marketplace today? So the marketplace today is great, right? At the end of the day, we have vacancy that's forecasted for 2021 to be around 25% for retail. We have effective rents that are down 11%. So that means there's a lot of leverage for us, especially once the financing comes around, especially as we sell to a landlord as far as so many things, right? Corona fatigue, the innovation within our industry, and of course, their overall level of vacancy. So when you're looking for a new property, are some of the things that you really want to talk about? Some of the things that are obviously you're going to help you leverage and get the best deal. Because don't forget, this is a 5 to 12-year deal, right? So something that you need to think about is the economics of the deal. So the economics of the deal are going to be specific to your rent, right? Just basic rent. How do you create leverage for that? Well, look at the supply. Show them how much supply is out there. Show them the very little demand and say, hey, this is our industry, corona fatigue, and some of the things that you'll see in my slide deck. The other thing that you want to talk about, obviously, is TI allowance. Again, these are just things that you create leverage for and the things you really want to push for. You also need to be very specific about your construction period. You want as much construction time as you can get. And one thing that we're pushing for, and you'll see, is to get your construction, your commencement date, to start when your CO comes, not just, 3 months or 4 months, because you don't have any timing control on a permit, right? Construction escrows, free rent is huge. You'll see on the slides towards the back, I want to say 21 of 35. If you look back there, I may be wrong. I'm trying to act really smart right now. But in any case, if you look back there, you'll see there's a whole slew of terms that you can see. The other things that you want to think about are co-tenancy. Co-tenancy is huge because it's a specific point related to, it's not economics. We know that, for example, Walmart's not going to default, right? But there could be a Cato that could default. Dollar Tree's not going to default, but we know that, JCPenney has been in distress. Neiman Marcus has been in distress. In case if you are, J. Crew has been in distress. If you're in a mall, you need to say, hey, if X amount of tenants go away, the large anchors, let's say 40% of your anchors, 70% or 40%. There's a lot of ways to negotiate this. As far as X percentage of your small retailers, well, hey, I need a reduction in my rent. I need a reduction unless, for example, and there's, again, specific terms, unless you can re-tenant it, unless the re-tenant it within a certain amount of time. The other thing that's really important for your lease is going to be force majeure. So force majeure, I'm sure you've already looked through it on your, for those people that have a current lease, you probably already looked at it. For those people that are looking for a new lease, what that means is, hey, force majeure means if there is a hurricane, if there is these natural disasters, well, I don't have to pay rent. There's default provisions where I can get out and all these kinds of things. One thing that we didn't have in there was a pandemic. And we know that there's a lot of risk coming as far as more pandemics and these kinds of things. Unfortunately, that's what we all hear from the CDC. So that being said, you need to have that in your new lease.
Do you expect a landlord would be amenable to adding a force majeure for a pandemic?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that'd be a tough one for them to swallow.
Oh, yeah, because it's a risk. You can't take that chance. In fact, right before the pandemic, I was working on a deal in, where was it? Up in DC, and talking to the landlord, very sophisticated mall landlord. And we said, hey, we need to put this in there. It was literally like predicting for the future. And he was like, okay, it's something that I wouldn't say it's to walk away, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. There's a way you can get around it potentially when you can say abandonment and continuous use, which means that if, for example, there's a pandemic and the city closes you,
Yeah.
which you don't have abandoned, you have to abandon it, you don't have continuous use, then you can say, hey, at the end of the day, okay, I don't have to pay rent. So it's kind of similar to that,
Got it.
but you need to tighten it up with your attorney for sure. Well, my breath is running a little short just because we're trying to keep time here. Excited again to have DK Patel. He's a franchisor out of North Carolina. He's got 3 locations. I've worked with him a little bit, continues to expand even to places like Alabama. Also a big stock market trader. I told him to hide his screens, but we saw those earlier. DK, we really appreciate you hiding those screens.
Sure, absolutely.
Right now, you know, I know how you like to serial entrepreneur. In any case, I think what I want to talk to you, and these are 2 strategies that we've talked about, is Justin got into a lot of specifics. Me and you've talked about a lot of specifics as far as, okay, you got rent abatement, you got reduction in rent. Some landlords were better. One thing that you got that was a good strategy, but you were able to really work it through, is a rent deferral.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how that happened and what you were able to kind of work through on that rent deferral.
Basically, of course, we have 3 locations, and one of the landlord is more than willing to work with you in different manners, and he understands that we are in that situation. So he did give me almost 6 months for free completely, because we were closed. Also, we were the only one we were closed in a shopping center. Everybody was open, and then after that, he sent me an email that if I had to start paying, and of course I don't mind to start paying and all stuff. So we start talking back and forth, and he said, okay, we'll talk about that, the past owed bills, later, but you need to start paying now actually. And so I asked question, what do you mean, like, past paying bills? So basically, he was asking that, hey, we need to pay the 10 months money, and originally we thought that was free. So, I send them my P&L that versus last year versus this year, and that was like 90% reduction on C. There was a big difference on that one. So, and we said, there was no way that we can make it that happen. Otherwise, we'll definitely go under, and we'll not be able to survive on that one. But we had a good term so far. We've been paying them regularly. We never ever let them down actually. So, that they're basically willing to work with us. Now they asked me how you want to pay and how much you want to pay. So my rent was $10,200. So basically I said I can afford $2,500, and what I can do, I can start paying you $2,500 this month, and next one I pay add $500 more. So I'll make it $3,000. Then I'll make $3,500. Then like $4,000. So we're increasing until we reach to $10,200. And as soon as we reach to our main number, to 10,200, we're gonna stop. We're not gonna continue 10,500, 11,000. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna continue that. So, and he agreed to do that. And we also make sure that you're not gonna come back next year and say, hey, very first month you pay only 2,500, so you owe me 8,000 again actually. So that was not the case. So basically they did let it go and say, okay, as long as you ramp up and made by 2021, end of the 2021, so 22 will be the start full paying actually. So that worked out pretty good for us. And of course, he was pretty nice to work with also.
I think that's, so there's two plays that you did, and it's all iterative when you work these deals out. It's not ever solved in one go, right? So one thing that you did that I want to highlight is you said, hey, I don't have the cash today.
Right.
You said this landlord obviously was in a good cash position. You were looking to expand with him. You were in a great position with him. You had a good relationship. You've been very solvent, which is something you obviously were able to sell. Then what you said is, hey, I don't have the cash today. Then you got a deferral, which is a win, because that means, hey, you're not doing anything to me. I'll get you you'll pay the rent in the future. But then when you said what you did there, which was great, is you said, hey, look, I don't want to take a big pop when you want this money to come back to me. Right. So you were able to push it out and get it reduced even there. Right. So you saved your cash and you reduced it. So so that was a huge play. Not a lot of landlords are going to do that. I think you made sure to memorialize it in writing so that you didn't have any issues with in the future. They say, hey, I need this. And I think that was great.
Right. I understand, and that's completely true. Yeah.
And so another thing that I think is a strategy that I want to talk about, and that I think you're currently working through, is what's called a blend and extend.
Right.
Right. And so what I want to do is explain it, and then I want to let you kind of specifically talk about how you're able to leverage that, or how you're trying to leverage that rather. So blend and extend means, hey, I have 3 years left on my lease. Okay.
Yeah.
You like me, I like you. You know that I'm going to stay long term. You know that I'm going to do great. You know you can't re-tenant. I will want some terms for the future, which is going to be free rent and all these kinds of things, and I will extend my lease. But I think the important thing, DK, and I want you to kind of jump in here, is you can do a blend and extend for a year. You can blend and extend for 5 years. You
Right.
want to do it slow when you're negotiating, but the beauty of it is you get to ask for things, not just because you're in a pandemic, but because you're giving them security for the future. Can you speak a little bit to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my lease is expiring next year, and that's why the landlord did approach me, because when we hit the pandemic, of course, they gave me 2 months for free, and then the third month is half price. So just because he gave me 2 months for free, he wanted to get extended for 1 year. So, and of course, I didn't want to move either at that point, actually, because of course there was a good location and all stuff. But we don't know how it's gonna play after the pandemic over. Right now, we still have a lot of concern, a lot of concerned mom actually to say, they don't want to be here. So, we did a 1 year extension for 2 months for free. And I would start asking him that, how about if I sign a 5 years of agreement and then give me a 10 months for free now, because I can use that money now versus, you give me some, better rate later. So, I was trying to do that, but, then and he was basically kind of okay with that. But then he needed to start thinking again, that's 10 months free rent right now. That could be challenging for him actually, because he's also owner operator for himself actually. So right now, we still, like you said, we're still in a negotiation at that point, because he's also worried that if I walk out from here, that I'm the biggest tenant, I'm the anchor tenant in the shopping center. And when we joined, there was almost 90% of the shopping center was empty. So after we took over actually, and now they start filling up. So now 100% occupancy is full. So we do generate a lot of customers and traffic. So of course he wanted me to stay for sure. So he would do, definitely work out a better deal for me. But then I was talking to RJ and find out that maybe I can ask for TI money again, because we're going to consider as a brand new lease again. So definitely, that's something, there's a room there to do better negotiation for sure.
And I think it's really smart that, again, DK is an anchor tenant. He's been solvent. He's not just a run of the mill. He has 3 locations, all these kinds of things. He's got a really good balance sheet. I've seen his stock portfolio recently as well, so it continues to get better. And so that all being said, you don't want to make it acrimonious, but you're also buying yourself time. Right. So you're saying, hey, why don't you go think about this as well? You're giving them, whether or not the deal happens, it gets him a little excited. It allows him to go back to his lender and say, hey, give me a little break here, so long it's not a CMBS lender. I have a guy that's going to re-sign for another 10 years. Right. You also get to be able to bring, hey, look, and I think we talked about this, you could potentially go to another location. Right. There's a lot of locations, and that you're having parking issues. Sure. So there's a lot of leverage that you have. You don't want to just sign a 3-year document, right, and not actually get back in the driver's seat. That's right. And I think that you going that route is going to be really fortuitous for you for your next deal if you decide to move forward. Well, again, DK, thank you so much. I want to take a couple of minutes before DK has to pop off. I think the market's, I'm not going to make any more jokes. We have a group thread about stock market. So I see DK just giving me all these tips. I can't even keep up. That's why I keep bringing it up. And then I asked him last week, I was like, DK, can you tell me what the heck you're doing? He's like, I subscribe to this. I subscribe to this. So I know he really does have to run. In any case, does anyone have any questions that we can specifically for DK?
And if not, I got a couple that I can pop out at you, RJ.
Great.
if there's people looking to take advantage of this opportunity, right, to expand their existing location and or add an additional location, tell us a little about the marketplace for doing so.
Actually, people are excited about getting the indoor playground and facility. Right now, they're also worried actually, they know how it's going to play out. So we do have a couple of, solid inquiries that they're really looking into this one. But right now, we don't want them to sign something that they will not feel comfortable 100% for sure. We know exactly that, our balance will work well. So far, actually, even the pandemic also, we start bouncing back again. But there are so many factors that people thinking right now, actually. So it is, ramp it up, but, we still have to, I think, take a little bit pause actually this time, actually, to see how they think about the, market going forward.
And RJ, what are your thoughts about that? With I used to work for Malcolm Steinberg, who had a great line. He said, "When the pie gets smaller, cut yourself a bigger slice." And I would think this is the time to do that. What are your thoughts on that, RJ?
As far as overall opportunities?
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a broker. I really am not. I mean, it was a hard space last year. Amazon, Wayfair, online groceries are up like 43%. You know what I'm saying? And some of this is not going to come back. Like
Right.
Some of the grocery stores, some of these anchors are not going to come back. And so for us as an industry, and our industry is so poised, you can't have an FEC and you can't sit at home and, you can't shop and buy it at home, right? So lots of vacancies, rents come down. I mean, stimulus money coming out, unemployment going up, money going to continuously coming. That's a separate Fed issue. But I think that our industry is great. And the beauty of a lease is you get to sit back and take a year to negotiate it.
Yeah.
You can always walk away. So you can sit there and as there's more opportunities, you can say, "Hey, landlord, oh, I just got another deal."
Yes.
So it's a huge point of leverage. I'm passionate about it, obviously, but yeah, I think it's great. It's definitely a tenant's market.
You can't work from home, basically, right? You can't play from home.
Right. You can't play from home. Kids always need a birthday party, right? 2008.
And what Justin said early in the conversation, cash is king. That certainly is true when
Right.
you are looking to grow your business now, because that's an opportunity. There's so many opportunities, like you said, RJ, to grow into right now. And then Justin, I'm sorry, DK, DK, RJ, too many initials. During your conversations with DK and Justin, you articulated several strategies. Are there any other landlord strategies you think can help the audience?
Oh, I mean, there's several others, to be honest. I just wanted to hit on 7. It's in my deck, to be honest. I didn't, off the top of my mind, I can pull up my deck, but there's a bunch of others. I was actually going to shift gears for the future stuff, but I'm happy to talk about stuff for anyone else that wants to talk about other strategies. And again, we sent the deck ahead of time, just so it's a point of reference. And if you want to ask more questions, happy to get into more detail. But
are there some things to look out for when signing a lease during these times? Anything specific you should be really focused on?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we talked about abandonment and continuous use. That is huge. And it should be tied into what the city or what the state or what the government, I guess federal can't really do much at this point, or what Abbott, whoever's doing it. So that way you can make sure that, hey, I can't open my place, and in which case I shouldn't have to pay rent, or I can walk away. The other thing that you really want to focus on, and there's a win-win for the landlord, and then there's a win-win for you because it helps in marketing and it keeps people clean, is you want to look out for sanitization, right? You need to think about UV lighting, germicidal bulbs. So what happens? In your letter of intent, when you send for a new location, you ask for a bunch of different things, right? You ask for better restrooms, you ask for better lighting, you ask for removal of the flooring, these kinds of things. But also what you want to ask for is sanitization. I want germicidal bulbs. I want UV lighting. Are they going to say yes? Probably not. Maybe not. I mean, the big REITs are investing in these kinds of things, but what you say is, hey, landlord, when I walk away, you still own those things. You get to market your building better. Also, I get to market my business better because people will be more inclined and say, hey, we have these things. So sanitization is one thing. Filtration is huge. There's something out there called MERV 13 filters. They're a little bit more expensive, but they help with these kinds of things as far as filtration. You can talk to your contractor about it. Again, landlord's happy because it helps building, helps on a point of leverage. When you say, oh, I got to walk away from the deal, there's 40 other properties. Of course, there's not 40, but it helps on a leverage standpoint and it helps for your business. Outside space is really good as much as you can get it. If you can create outside space, you don't want, it's interesting. You used to want to have enclosed space with the windows and such. Now you want more filtration.
Yeah.
How you can create that is really important. Other things to look out for, personal guarantee burn off to put in your lease. Justin talked about that.
Yeah.
It goes back to having more leverage, asking for an early termination, asking for, again, co-tenancy, asking for a construction escrow. We have a 6-page letter of intent. And there are a lot of different things that today you can ask for that you couldn't before. It's not a lot of FECs that purchase, but I want to talk a little bit about purchasing because that's relevant as well. Right now, we know that minus industrial, there are opportunities to purchase, especially like on the land side. Maybe if you're buying a retail strip and you're going to be a landlord, there's distressed pricing coming about. There is an opportunity to put less money down in escrow. There's longer feasibility studies. Buying a property is a lot easier. But the point here is that there's a lot of leverage on both the leasing and purchasing side.
Well, we're coming up to the end here, RJ. Thanks for sharing all this and being part of this. DK and Justin, thanks for participating. Is there anything else you'd like to throw up there to the group before we get into our conclusions here? Kevin, we just had a chat from Kevin Walters of Pinheads Entertainment, and he writes, "We are actively seeking expansion opportunities wherever they may be. We are a debt-free company that owns our real estate too. Now back to 94% of pre-COVID levels." That's a good number to be at. He prefers 40,000 square feet or more, and he leaves his email and phone number in there. So if anybody wants to take a look at the chat, you got Kevin Walter at bowl@pinheads.com, and his phone number, 513-276-0805. Again, that's in the chat for anyone to take a look at.
Pete, I would like to say something, and look, it's a tough time for the people that have space. I appreciate the people that have come, and I also would like to say anyone else that wasn't able to attend, I am offering pro bono consulting. I feel like I've always said FECs are salt of the earth. They're putting a lot of their own money. This isn't a corporation. This is their own money. This is their own livelihood. It's an iterative process to work with your landlord. Happy to talk it through with you. I don't know how many people I've worked with over the last year. But I also want to open that to you guys as well. So yeah, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I've borne witness to this, RJ, with you participating in the Beth Stanley weekly peer talk calls and your generous outreach to folks, offering your expertise and experience. And he's serious. If you've got questions about your situation, your real estate situation, he can be reached. I'll give you his direct phone number is 713-392-3998. Again, that's 713-392-3998, or RJ Mohindra, rj.mohindra at FECrealestate.com. And you can have a conversation about your specific situation. And of course, if you're planning on opening a new location, you might want to start by talking to RJ first. And while I'm talking about free things, please consider joining AAMA. We've waived membership dues this year due to the pandemic to send the message that we are so much stronger than me. You can find a membership application on our website at coin-op.org. RJ, Justin, DK, thanks for taking time to share your expertise and experience with us today. It's much appreciated. I'm really glad to hear the sound of optimism in your voice. It was a year ago today that we kicked off the Amusement Expo International with our Education Day in New Orleans, Louisiana. I certainly didn't expect to find us where we are a year later, still battling with this crisis. But there does seem to be some silver lining coming out of it. There's a light at the end of the tunnel in the form of the vaccine growing in numbers every day. So get yours when they're ready. I also want to give a special thanks to the rest of my team here at AAMA. Tina and Alex, you guys make us all look good. And everybody, I talked about the Amusement Expo. We're holding one again this year, a little later than normal. That's going to be June 29th. 30th and July 1st in sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. We're an industry that likes to get together. We like to do things in person. And I think that's going to be a heck of a gathering. I certainly believe it'll come together in a big way and really be the starting point of us getting back to what we do best. And that's putting miles of smiles on people's faces. RJ, Justin, TK, thank you again. And for the rest of you, keep paying attention. We'll be hosting another webinar in April. And we'll get details out via email when we pull that all together. So once again, thanks everybody. Have yourself a wonderful day.